we'd be going with trying to get some cost estimates, because I don't know if you know, but the selectmen put on a special town meeting for August 9th, right here, 7 o'clock, I believe. Yeah, 7 o'clock, to deal with how we're going to pay for this. It's not cheap. So we'll have to get some cost estimates, and we'll probably bring in another company to look over our shoulders. It's one of the companies that worked up in Lexington, where they were able to do this, just to say, yeah, we see your results, we think you can do it, and then have a second set of eyes, like a second opinion when you go to the doctor. And then we have to develop what's called a risk management plan, where we have to figure out how often are we going to test after that, make sure those levels stay below. We'll have to then figure out if the EPA will allow us to basically block out areas that may still have some of this material, but because we brought the levels down, we can go into the building, but at least you want to try to close some of these things off. It's called encapsulation, basically, taping around it and keeping it from anybody being able to touch it or access it. So we have to develop that plan with the EPA. They'll tell us, yep, you can do that, and no, you can't do that, and this is what else you got to do. And then hopefully we'll talk to the Massachusetts School Building Authority to see if they will help the town with the price tag. We know that it's, the economy hasn't recovered as much as we'd like it to, and it's going to be, hitting our pockets some way, shape, or form. And so if the state could help ameliorate that, that'd be great. And then there's the question, because I figured I always try to do what happens if the answer is the stuff we tried didn't work. Now we have a few weeks to try to figure out what are we going to do with many of you that are sitting here probably wondering, where are we going? 550 students. We're still exploring those options. Some of them involve talking to other school districts, Dartmouth, New Bedford, Fall River, Fairhaven. I've actually finally gotten a hold of everybody, and at least somebody in each one of those. And basically we're looking for buildings that they may have emptied out, like Fall River took some of their smaller schools and built some much bigger ones, so some of their old buildings are around. New Bedford may have some places. They're looking at it for me. I know Dartmouth has a school, although it has issues. Fairhaven has a school. It's small. It's a little further away. So all of these options are going to be evaluated. We're going to say, can we do it? What are the pros? What are the cons? How much is it going to cost? And then have to bring it back to make a decision. There's other ideas been thrown around, including, can we use space within the district? And I have to tell you, we're very tight. It's not like we have buildings that have room for another 550 students that we can just move them somewhere and just say that's how we're going to operate. Somebody threw out at me that perhaps local churches, the problem there is I don't know local churches that would have more than 3-4 rooms at a time. So you're going to have one grade level here, one grade level there, one classroom here. It may be an option, so we'll look at that. You have private schools in the area that may have room as well. We're still checking that out. I did contact BCC and UMass Dartmouth. I just got a phone call back today from BCC, but they're not. We're playing phone tag. So we'll try to get a hold of them. And then there's the possibility of commercial buildings. Like right now, the last 2 days I was with my administrators over in Fairhaven in one of the UMass satellite areas. And it's basically an office building that they've subdivided inside and made some working spaces for staff. And we were in there working away from the school district. We do this once a year. I take the administrators out for 2-3 days and go over the district improvement plan to try to plan for the next year, because that still has to happen. So we're looking at all these options. I'm not going to tell you that we have one that we've latched onto. Like I said, in a very short period of time, We'll have some answers. We'll have to decide in or out. Can we open the building? Can we not open the building? If we can't open the building, then we have to take a look at all these options and then decide which way are we going to go, how much is it going to cost, and what's it going to take to do it. Because if we go away from the building, now you're talking, you still have to clean everything, and then it has to be moved, and then we have to move the staff, and then we have to figure out transportation and figure it out. It takes a lot of logistics. And for the students, it may mean a much longer day because you'll be on the bus to get to a central site and then shuttle from there somewhere else. So some of the students are going to have to spend a little bit more time in transportation if we go that route. So my hope is that we can open the building when we do this. And just so that, one last thing, because people have asked about this, and that is, what happens later? Okay, say we open the building, say we can lower those levels below the threshold that the EPA says should be there. We still have the materials in the building, okay? So long term, the town, the MSBA, we will have to decide what we're going to do. Lexington decided that they would build a new school. We don't know what it would take yet to actually take out all the brick, take out all the windows, not all the brick, but the brick around these areas that are now contaminated, take out anything else that we find that may contain the materials, maybe a big price tag. And then you fix the building, and then you still have an old building. But it's a possibility. And then there is the possibility of a long-term occupation of a building that still has the PCBs in it. We'll have to get that approved by the EPA, and there would have to be a much longer range plan to be able to do that. So that risk management plan that I talked about, instead of being for 1 year, it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The town's going to have to decide which way we go. Okay? So for the last 3 months, this is where we've gotten to, and hopefully in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to give you an update. We'll have the town meeting to figure out how much is it going to cost, which way we're going. And I'm just, again, pointing you, as we get information, we'll post it up on the website so that hopefully most of your questions will be answered. Now, like in every superintendent's coffee, without the coffee this time, if you want to ask questions, all I ask you to remember is, 1, we're live, so please be polite. Okay? We're live on the air. 2, just because this is a very large crowd and there's faces that I don't think I know, just identify yourself, who you are, do you have kids in the school, where you live, that kind of stuff. So at least we know who we're talking with. And if you have specific questions that I can't answer, I hope you don't mind, but I'll turn over to the experts behind me, and we'll try to go there. Okay? We do have microphones, because if you speak from where you are, you may or may not get picked up by the cameras and the systems that we have in place. So I would ask you to use the mics.
Could you tell me how many rooms are in the building? Kathleen Grimley, 2 children at the middle school. How many rooms are in the building? You tested 16. So I'm wondering how many rooms are actually in the building. How many?
You have about 60 rooms.
60.
It's interesting because you're going to have also open areas, hallways and things like that we'll have to deal with as well.
Okay. So you tested 16 rooms and are not testing any other rooms because you determined from the 16 rooms that half of them are over the limit? Am I correct in that?
There were enough over the limit that we were saying yes.
We don't need to test anymore.
Well, it's not just that we don't need to test anymore, it's that we have some that we already know are over the limit. Mm-hmm. So let's figure out what we do with those. If we can fix those, then we can use the same protocol and go through the whole building. Right. If we're going to clean, even if you have a room that's lower than the threshold, might as well clean them too. And usually the risk management plan, after talking to the people in Lexington, they're on a constant basis of sampling throughout the building. So even though we didn't do all the rooms originally, the way they did it is they have a series of a schedule, so that over the course of the year, because they're going to be in that building for a few years while the other school's getting built, I think, next to it or something like that, they go and test different rooms at each cycle and then report back, here's where they are. And probably that's what we'll end up doing, because usually people talk to each other, what did you do over there? We'll try that over here.
And has the building ever been tested for PCBs prior to this window?
The EPA does not recommend that you go and test every building. In fact, they say, there's probably PCBs in just about everything that you come in contact with in life nowadays, because it was prevalent in its use. It's how much there is. And when they really get you to test or want you to test is when you're going to disturb it.
Right.
It's like asbestos. If you've ever had it in your home and you had those old pipes wrapped up with the stuff and it starts to break apart, that's when they say, you should really take that out. But they're not asking anybody to go test. I've heard some figures that they estimate maybe a third of the schools may have it, of around that area, that time frame of when they were built. So they're not saying you have to go out and test, and that in fact if you leave stuff alone, most of the time you'll be fine.
Right. So it has never been tested, as far
No.
as you know.
The reason why we
Okay.
tested was because we were going
Because
to take care of the windows,
I
and we knew
understand.
we were going to disturb it.
I understand. The other thing I wanted to comment on is you had mentioned it seeped into the concrete around the windows that have the caulking, and now it's in the glue that's holding on the panels on the ceiling.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So if it seeped into the concrete around the window, wouldn't it be safe
it
to say
seeped
that it would
into-
seep into the concrete on the ceiling?
We thought of that. However, again, once we found out that it was in the air, and that would be your most common exposure. If you're a kid in the building, chances are...
Yeah, I just mean for cleanup. If you're
Well,
thinking
let me
of cleanup-
finish, and I'll get to that. The most common exposure would be either to touch it, inhale it, lick it. Most kids don't go around licking things, but stuff does get in your hands and that stuff. So if we clean and the air is clean, then you're taking care of how much is in the environment. So whether it's up in the cement, it's not one of those things we're going to go testing right away. We just want to bring those immediate exposure weight, the air and the dust. We got to get that out of the building. Once we get that out of the building, obviously there'll be some that will be put out into the building, but that's why you have the risk management, that you keep doing the testing over and over to make sure that it's working. And there are some ways that you can block it off, but again, that's part of the management plan that's a little bit more long-term, and the EPA has to approve that. So before we go doing that, we need to just figure out, is there a way to clean it enough to get it down below the level, and then we'll work with the EPA whether there's possibilities to seal off the cement, go around the caulking around the window, seal that off, so there's no more of that coming into the environment. But that's a little bit more long, I would call it medium term.
Okay, but we will have to remove the caulking around the window, whether it's sealed off. I mean, eventually, that's going to be a long-term.
Well, those are the long
Those are
terms up there.
long-term?
Yes. Unless the EPA decides, yes, it's okay to occupy it for a long time and just keep doing the testing and just keep doing the cleaning. But that gets expensive over time as well. So that may be one of the considerations, is how long do you want to do that?